Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Now, eagle-eyed listeners will be aware that Tom is not here. And I guess if I don't mention that he's not here, I'll get a Suki text 3 days from now being like, oh, why didn't you mention me on the show? People are going to think you're a gorgeous duo instead of a sumptuous trio.
They would never think that, George. We are a tripod, and if you've got a tripod, you can't have a tripod with two legs. So you've got to have three. And Tom is definitely one leg of that tripod. Yeah. This analogy sucks.
My nickname in university was the tripod. So that's good to bring that back.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm 32 and I have a child. So making penis jokes on the internet. That's great. So this is a news and politics. So Tom is unavailable, obviously. Sends his apology, sends his regards, but he's too important for you listeners. Okay, he's got big things to do and can't be mucking around
in the nation's capital.
Bullshit. Yeah, in the nation's capital, doing some live on the ground reporting on history's greatest monsters who resign in Canberra.
The rabbits.
Yeah. No, I meant the politicians, but yes.
All right, okay. There's a lot of rabbits in Canberra, but yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, yeah.
Speaking of alleged monsters, Bruce Lehrmann.
We must express alleged.
Alleged. Okay. So Bruce Lehrmann, who many will be aware, was accused of rape by Brittany Higgins. There was a mistrial, and then the Department of Public Prosecutions declined to then try and re-prosecute Mr. Lehrmann. So he was a Liberal staffer, worked with Brittany Higgins in 2019. That very same Bruce Lehrmann has been revealed as the high-profile man that has been charged with 2 counts of rape in Toowoomba. So there was a lot of, I don't know, what's the best way to frame this?
So the story was
completely non-fact-based conjecture happening on Twitter that Bruce Lehrmann might be the person that was the person, that was...
who is the high profile? Yeah, the story was for several months, who is the high profile?
The media was playing such a saucy boy with this information. They're like, we can't tell you who it is, but there's a super good story. You guys are going to be so interested in this high profile man accused of rape in Toowoomba. We can't tell you who it is because we would be very naughty boys if we did, but you're going to be so super interested when it comes out.
They we were listening. My partner and I were listening to a podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but one of the hosts on that was just like, "Yeah, I looked up the court records because they haven't hidden those. They've just put a media blackout on recording about it. Well, so you could have just Googled it and you worked it out."
Don't know if that podcast should have done that necessarily because the podcast is a media outlet. But yeah, anyway,
any court transcript has any court records are public knowledge, so you can look it up and say who went to court in any given day.
Right. Okay.
And the guy's name was there. So, they were being very saucy about it. They're like, oh well, I think it'll be pretty devastating when it comes out. And it's like, okay.
Oh, okay. So they didn't reveal it on air. They just said I googled it. Here's how you would do that if you wanted to. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, correct. Exactly right.
Smart.
And this has been going on for a few months now, where it's been in Toowoomba, there's this rape trial that's getting underway.
What's going on?
So and basically what's been happening is that Bruce Lehrmann, however you pronounce it, he has basically been applying for gag orders to stop his name being released to the media for a few months now, and eventually the judge now has just been like, no, there's no.
Apparently, there's also
we get your mental health is suffering, but also there's no legal reason for you not to have your name released.
There were also some new laws that were introduced by the Queensland government in September that would allow the naming of accused sex offenders after they're charged. So so in light of all that, they was found that there was no good reason to withhold this information. So
so that's a good point actually, because I think if it would have been a year or two ago, it might not have. It might have not been released. So,
but I mean, at a certain
you go.
point, like you're going to be in the dock, testifying. Like people are going to find out. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, it's obviously we should state for the record that Bruce Lehrmann also denies strenuously these rape allegations as well. So there's a number of different. There's at least 3 different rape allegations that he denies strenuously.
Two counts of rape.
Yep. In this case, and then there was the alleged Brittany one. Yeah. So he strenuously denies. My lawyers have advised me to advise you that he strenuously denies all 3 different allegations of rape.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's all we need to say about that.
How'd we do on that? Was that okay?
I think I was fine. I don't think we're going to get sued.
I think we're good.
That. These are all things that are just in the public realm.
Mm-hmm.
So what's weird, though, is that the Brittany Higgins thing was what day? Was that 2019?
Sorry, I'm just seeing a bit of smoke over my back fence.
Sorry. Yeah, no, they're coming for you.
No, it's just the... I wonder if there's a fire, but you know what they say. There's... Anyway,
where's he going with this?
No, it's all right.
Is there actually a fire?
No, it's just a bit of smoke over the back fence. Nobody knows what's.
Okay. So there's no fire.
Nobody knows what's going on.
There's definitely smoke, though.
Definitely smoke.
Yeah.
So
definitely smoke. Right.
Unrelated to this story. Sorry to cut in there. I just wanted to point that out for the listeners.
But just interesting, the timeline of something. So Brittany Higgins, the incident, the alleged incident with her, when did that occur? Was it 2019?
That was in 2019, and the allegations from this Toowoomba case were from October in 2021. So just over 2 years ago.
Was 21? Was this already ongoing in 21? The whole Brittany Higgins thing, or was it 22 that all came out?
These are facts that we have.
I'm just trying to think, did he allegedly do the second thing while all the shit was happening with the first thing? Do you know what I mean? Or is this all... I might have just got my timeline completely mixed up. I think the whole Brittany Higgins thing came out in 22 because it was...
Okay, here we go. There's a timeline from Marie Claire. So the incident is alleged to have occurred at Parliament House, March 23rd, 2019.
When did Scott Morrison get voted out? It must have been 22.
So he, in November 5th of 2021, according to The Guardian, Lehrmann, whose identity remained formally unknown at the time, appears via telephone in a magistrate's court and pleads not guilty to a charge of sexual intercourse without consent occurring in Parliament House in March 2019. So that was November 5th of 2021, which is, I guess, a week or two after these Toowoomba events are alleged to have occurred.
Interesting. Anyway, just wanted to...
who knows? Neither here nor there. Just curious. Just interesting. Curious about that.
Interesting.
Curious.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean... It's I guess more will come with this. It's early days, but yeah, that's the news as it stands with this individual. I will be interested to see the right wing's reaction to all this. I haven't looked a lot into any. I don't know. Maybe the Sky News have been very quiet on the whole thing. I don't know.
Possibly.
I mean, when the whole Brittany Higgins thing came out, I remember there were a lot of people that were just like, oh, she's a silly little girl, who, like one guy in Adelaide was like, yeah, she just needs her bottom smacked because she's just being immature, basically. He got fired.
Do we live...
Jerry Cordeaux, I think his name was. I might have got the details wrong slightly there, but...
I sometimes wonder if I just live in a different country completely than all of the rest of the people who live here. Like, if I'm just walking around in my silly lefty Melbourne bubble and I'm like...
There is a Melbourne bubble. Like, don't get me wrong. There is definitely a Melbourne bubble and we're definitely inside that bubble.
It's nice in here. People get treated equally. Allegations of sexual assault get taken seriously. Like... we respect Indigenous culture. Like, it's pretty good inside the bubble. I welcome the rest of Australia to join us. And then you hear these stories about what's going on outside the Melbourne bubble. You go, what the fuck is going on out there? You're saying a rape victim needs needs to be an alleged rape victim needs to be spanked? Like, what is
Not
going
spanked.
through?
I think
I'm
probably paraphrasing.
whatever. But like,
yeah, I'm paraphrasing a bit there, but there was some incident where, because some people, friends of mine, were sharing some of his content in response to the No campaign, and I googled him. I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "Oh, he was on Adelaide radio for like 20 years or something ridiculous."
Cool.
But then he got, he said some funny things about Brittany Higgins, and then was just quietly shown the door. And now has his own independent podcast. Like, I don't know, George. We've had an independent podcast for many years now, and I don't know how. How do all these people get tens of thousands of followers? I don't understand. What are we doing wrong, George?
It's like, bro, we've been out here since 2010. We've been out here as long as, but like before, when I told people that we did a podcast and people were like, what's a podcast? And I had to explain what podcasting was to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like internet radio. They're like, but if it's radio, how can you listen? If it's on the internet, how do I get it? If it's not on the radio, you idiot.
Do you mean I've got to have an iPod for that to work? How does that? I mean, in the early days, you did have to have an iPod, I think.
But, you did, and you had to sync it up. That's how I used to get my podcast back in the day. I get my iPod Classic. I would plug it in using the 16-pin connector into my computer, and it would sync the podcasts that I downloaded. You couldn't download them directly onto the device. That was the iPhone. That was much later. You had to like download the episodes, sync them onto your iPod, and then listen to them. And then if you ran out of podcasts, you just didn't have any more podcasts to listen to.
You also forgot the step where you have to update iTunes every single time you log in. You have to update iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what. Yeah. iTunes has an update. Yeah. And that'll take 20 minutes.
Yeah, it does bother me slightly that, it's just like Gigi Hadid's got a podcast. I'm like, no, it's not for you, Gigi. Like, it's for us, okay? It's for the ugly neck-bearded nerds who couldn't get onto terrestrial radio because no one would allow us to. It's not for you. They're like, oh, Abby Chatfield's got a show. I'm like, no, Abby, you can just be on radio. You don't need a pod. That was our thing.
Abby Chatfield's done very well with her.
She's done very well for herself.
Yeah. And by all accounts, her content is pretty good. But
I can't comment.
It is funny. I think the key thing is with a lot of these people is they've already got followings and they just transform it into the next thing.
It makes sense. Like if
we've definitely never had a following.
We've never developed a following in the first place, and so therefore it would be the transitive property of being able to transfer that following to something else never occurs in the first place. But it is like podcasting, especially as a genre, kind of makes more sense when you consider it from that perspective. Someone who's already got a public profile, or someone who's become famous on social media, then takes that and parlays that into a thing.
Moves it in.
I get why it happens, because it's like, okay, well, you're on some. Oftentimes you've built up an audience on some mainstream channel and then you get fired or you want to leave and you go, well, I've got all these followers. Like I can just do something directly with them and then, get them to subscribe or, become members of my Patreon or whatever and just have a direct to subscriber model that makes more sense than having it mediated through a large media company.
Tucker Carlson, he's gone. He's doing his own thing now, man. He's doing his own thing.
But exactly right. It's like I feel as though podcasts are now being associated with like just like a den of iniquity, just like a bunch of people that just Joe Rogans, and you're like anyone who's like too far of a right wing shithead to be on Fox News. Like gets a podcast, and everyone's like, I guess that's what podcasts are now. It's just like Jordan B. Peterson yelling at the woke mob, or like Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro just yelling, just screaming epithets about the Barbie movie. Like, and people are like, I guess that's what podcasting is. It's a bunch of white dudes with microphones that look very similar to this one, just yelling about vaccines on the internet. Like
we yell about vaccines, but we sort of say the opposite. So
we say the scientifically correct thing about vaccines. Yes.
But anyway, so maybe Bruce Lehrmann one day will have a podcast. Who knows?
Lord help us all.
Lord help us all. But look, I'm sorry, George, because we did say that everything's nice in the Melbourne bubble, and I am going to burst that bubble for you because it turns out, Victoria is kind of fucked up in its own unique ways, And the first article we have about from Victoria today is of a retired, and he's been forcibly retired, shall we say, in this instance.
Retired from a great height.
Yes, indeed. Victorian MP Russell North. He's 57, and he has been he's been jailed. He's going to spend at least a year behind bars. He falsely claimed more than $170,000 in administrative expenses while a Victorian MP.
In all fairness, have you seen the price of ink?
It's very expensive.
It's very expensive to get ink replacements.
Those cartridges you have to get. Like, the printer is cheaper than the ink cartridges.
You can legitimately go and buy a brand new printer, which comes with a cartridge, and probably spend an equivalent amount of money to just buy the cartridges.
No, George, have you seen my back cupboard? It's just printers. It's just printers that I've just not don't know what to do with anymore because the ink's run out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
those little ink things, liquid gold, man. HP.
Liquid gold.
That's a whole new subgenre of.
And whether or not $175,000 worth of ink, maybe not.
I mean, no one can possibly use 5 ink cartridges all at once. That would cost roughly $170. They're very expensive, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's the joke is that they are extremely expensive.
But they are. And terrible for the environment. But anyway, so it turns out having an independent, broad-based anti-corruption commission just kind of works.
Kind of a good idea.
It does things. Yeah. So they basically investigated Mr. North. He was the member for Morwell in the States East in 2020. And then, what do they call it here in Victoria? I guess the synonym for that, or the pseudonym, or whatever they call it, the acronym, would be
the IBAC.
Yeah. IBAC. There you go. So he had, like, as all politicians are required to have their finances audited, and he did have his audited. But what he did was he gave that auditor a bunch of false receipts for things.
That auditor should honestly be fired.
False bank statements. Like, I don't know how do you even falsify a bank statement? Did you just get a PDF editor? I guess you probably, and then just
and you just punch in new number. Not that we're teaching people how to do crimes here on Unnatural Selection.
No.
The crimes cast with Adam and George.
We'll talk about some how to do crime perhaps in the next article. Sort of segues into that, but. So he claimed he claimed he paid for administrative assistance through a labour hire firm, and he bought a new printer and paid $3,100 per month in office rent. He did not have any of those things.
So the auditor signed off on his claims, believing that they were legitimate. He claimed $192,800 in expenses over the 2 years, with $175,800 being falsely made.
Yep.
So he's been sentenced in Victorian County Court to 21 months in jail after pleading guilty to 2 charges of misconduct in public office. He'll be eligible for parole in 1 year. I just kind of feel like if you sold, $175,000 worth of weed, or had $175,000 worth of coke, like, the punishment would be more severe. I know, because it's like a white guy who was an MP who stole money from the taxpayers. It was just kind of like, you get a year. But if it was like a kid selling a dime bag on the street corner, it'd be like 10 years in jail.
10 years, no parole period.
Yeah.
No hope of recovery.
Yeah.
So the judge, Michael McInerney, I think I've pronounced that correctly, is the judge, accepted that North had committed his crimes in the depths of an alcohol and gambling addiction, and that he had lost over $223,000 over a 2-year period.
Okay, but I understand gambling is an addiction. I acknowledge that fact. But also, you can't then just go, we'll charge it back to the taxpayers. It's not how it works.
It must have been, there must have been something... Like, the amount that he must have been claiming must have been pretty ridiculous, because, why would they investigate him and no one else?
It would for sure be because of the discrepancy in the amounts versus the other, the other MPs, right? They're looking at it, they're like,
50K, and they're like,
okay, so Russell's got, 175 grand. Okay. Sorry, 192 grand across 2 years. What's Bob got? 15 grand. What's Carol got? 5 grand. What's, like, surely, but that auditor absolutely needs to be fired. Like, I don't know, it seemed legit. Like he said he had an apartment, and then here's a hand scribbled receipt that says apartment costs spelled incorrectly with a note that says I owe you $3,100. Like, I don't know. It just seems like surely it's incumbent upon the auditor whose job it is to like check all of these things.
Yeah.
To be like, where are the receipts for all of that? Can I have a chat to the your expenses are orders of magnitude more than your colleagues. Like, surely there's some rules. Like when I've worked for companies that have expenses protocols, they're like, you're allowed $30 for lunch. You're allowed, a per diem when you're traveling of $15 a day or whatever. It's like, it's pretty strictly held. But I guess for Victorian MPs, you could just submit. Like, there's no policy. There's no, like, these are the things you're allowed to claim. These are the things you're not. They're just like...
There's definitely a rule set, but obviously...
Okay, but then, like, shouldn't some questions have been asked when it's like a succulent Chinese meal, $3,000? Should someone have been like, that's not on the list, buddy? Like, I feel like the whole point of an auditor is to interrogate what it is that's being submitted, right? So you can't just go like, oh, I submitted the receipts, and the auditor goes, yeah, he's got receipts. Like, no, that's the point of your job, auditor, is to make sure that shady shit like this doesn't happen. You're like, oh, but he's got, he submitted a screenshot of a PDF, so like we're good. He put it in Expensify, so
it's not like when you're doing your tax and then the accountant's like, how much did you spend on laundry? They just look at you like this, and you're like, I don't know. Like, I probably washed my jacket a couple times.
A reasonable amount.
$200. Yeah. That's the tax system. But it's a bit different to
claiming these are work expenses.
An assistant, like it was an assistant he had through a labor hire firm. So I guess it's like, what was your assistant's name? Jess.
George Cauldron.
And how long did she work here for? Oh, a couple of weeks. Yep. And you paid her $100,000, you say?
Months, couple of months.
Months. Yeah, cool. Yeah. What was her middle name? Oh, actually, you wouldn't know her middle name probably. What was her last name? Jess. I don't know. There's just a lot of questions there that.
Obviously I feel bad for anyone who's struggling with gambling addiction, but it's like, you can't. Yeah, like my sympathy
crazy though. Like,
my sympathy runs out when it comes to like falsely pinning hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses on the taxpayer. Yeah. It's like you're in a position of public trust and you need to do better. Like, if you're struggling with gambling addiction, go get help for that.
It's kind of crazy Australian culture with gambling. Like, you see it on the TV with all the sports betting ads and obviously all the horses. I went to a Bucks party yesterday. We started off at a local pub in Oakley. And then I was like, oh, we'll get some food. They're like, oh, they don't do food here. And I was like, how do they make any money? And then I was like, the beer, I guess you have a probably good margin on, but you'd be only making, it's like $7 a pot. Like, how are you making any money on that? I walk in,
gambling,
fucking pokies area, a sports bar full of old dudes betting on the horses. Yeah. Cox Play was on yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
How do they make any money? You just like walk past, a door opens, you just see, we're in the money, and the door closes. Like,
yes. And it's actually probably a very good way to segue into the next article, which is that the Australian Federal Police have raided alleged money laundering a syndicate by the Changjiang Currency Exchange, which you may have heard of because they're a relatively big business.
I had not.
I have not. So basically, really interesting federal government raid, I guess, and sort of uncovering of the criminal masterminds behind this. They have Australian Federal Police have arrested 7 people in Melbourne. So, yes, sorry, George, the Melbourne bubble. It's full of money launderers.
Melbourne bubble
apparently.
strikes again.
And seized $50 million worth of luxury cars and property during raids on an alleged money laundering syndicate, which was operating in plain sight. So what happened was there is the syndicate of several people. They basically had been running this business called the Changjiang Currency Exchange, which is one of those like retail, like you walk down Swanston Street in Melbourne, and they're on the side of the road there, and they do money exchanges. You can send money overseas, swap your pounds for your dollars or whatever else, and they'll do that for you. So legit business. They even had a former Howard government minister.
I love this detail.
A Howard government minister. They had him up on a billboard or an advertisement online being like, it's very important that you work with reputable businesses. And he has since aggressively distanced himself from this business. But this is the thing, is that they had about
just
12
on that.
stores.
So Gary Hargrave, the former Howard government minister, there was a video that he actually he didn't just appear on a billboard. He actually gave an editorial, a testimonial for the business. As a government minister, shouldn't you know better than to do testimonials for businesses? Surely that would be a thing that you would go, hope this turns out good. Hope this company never does anything bad ever, because it's immediately going to come back and blow back on me for the $5,000 fucking day rate that I got for appearing in this testimonial.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's probably got a bit of a stipend for doing the testimonial, but
well, what could it possibly be worth that it's worth potentially jeopardizing your career by hitching your wagon to some random company star?
Yeah, it's crazy. And look, they had about, I think it said here somewhere, about 12 to sort of 14 of these storefronts basically around Australia. And what they were doing, so they were doing legitimate business, as all money laundering businesses sort of do. They'll ostensibly people will go in and do legitimate, and most of their work was legitimate. But then they also actively helped criminals and coached criminals on how to falsify documents.
Yeah, that's not good.
Submit receipts and do other crazy shit. And then they charge the criminals to launder their money. They
allegedly, I would like to say alleged. This is all alleged at this stage. There's been raids.
Sure.
People have been arrested, not molested. People have been arrested, but I believe none of these accusations have actually been proven out in court as of yet. So.
Not yet. They've just literally had the first, committal hearings, whatever you call it.
But some very dramatic raids. That's exciting. I do love a good raid.
I love a good raid.
More than 300 officers executed search warrants on homes and offices in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth early on Wednesday, following the 14-month investigation into the currency exchange. So they claim that police claim that they've helped criminals launder over almost $230 million over the past 3 years.
That's an insane amount of money.
That's so much money.
That's a lot of money.
And they've seized about $50 million worth of luxury cars and property. So, and one of the things in the article,
actively profiting off this, they were charging the criminals allegedly a higher rate than your average, Joe Blow walking off the street.
Well, the thing that you can do when you've got a currency exchange is you're facilitating the transfer of millions of dollars back and forth from, in currency to all these different currencies. And if one were wanting to do crimes, then that might be a really good way of masking a bunch of illegal money as well. The really clever criminals are not the ones that, just say, oh yeah, we'll move some illegal money around. The clever ones are the ones that say, yes, we'll move your money around, but we'll do it and we'll commingle it in with legitimate stuff. So it's hard to exactly see the source of where did exactly this exact piece of money originate from and where is it going, right? That's the whole point of money laundering, is to mix it in with other legitimate sources of money to make it look legitimate, right? So
allegedly they've had $10 billion that they've moved, both legitimate and I guess fraudulent in this case here. 10 billion total has been moved in and out of Australia in the past 3 years by this business, which is, again, an insane amount of money. So you're right, 10 billion, 80 to 90% of it's good stuff. And then, yeah, there's that small fraction.
Possibly the vast majority. That's the thing. That's what makes like criminal organizations so hard to catch and to pin down, is because it's the illegal activity is lost in an ocean of, legitimate looking stuff. The thing that I thought was really funny about the story is that lots of photos of AFP officers, dragging people from their homes and looking, very, very smug. But they, seized all this, cars and merch, and Mercedes is mentioned, and photographs of Rolex watches and designer handbags are seized during the operation as well. And I see that, and I see the photograph of the Rolex, and I bet the brand manager at Rolex is just going, "Come on, guys! You couldn't have gotten a Patek Philippe. You couldn't have gotten an Omega. You had a Tudor. You had to get a Rolex watch. You had to fuck up my day. Now it's like, it's
going into overdrive.
It's the fanciest watch. So I guess everyone's like, oh no, I've got a bunch of allegedly illegal money. What watch do I want? I want the fanciest one. I want a Rolex. But it's like, think about the brand managers. Think about the people who work in marketing whose day you've just ruined. They're just trying to make expensive watches.
It's the collateral damage.
Collateral damage. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Who are the real victims?
Yeah.
Brand managers at Rolex.
Four of the people charged and arrested are Chinese nationals. 3 are Australian citizens.
I really do think I would be such...
Had a cool name. Where's the cool name? Well, I can't find it. Hang on. I don't know. The syndicate had a cool name.
The Long River Syndicate. Is that what you're talking about?
The Long River Syndicate. How cool is that? But also very illegal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Was that so? I thought the Long River Syndicate was that the...
No, I think that was what they were separate.
Please. It is dubbed the Long River Money Laundering Syndicate. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So sorry. There's two different phrases for the name, for the same organization.
Yeah.
It's you don't fuck with the government's money. Okay. Like you can do because these guys, if their charges are proved, they had fake passports worth $200,000, in preparation to flee the country in case their activities were detected. Like it seems like a pretty open and shut case, right? But it's like, what you can, if you're an MP, you can borrow $175,000 and get a year in prison. If you fuck with the government's money like this on this scale, you're going to get life. Like they are up for life. You do not fuck with the government's tax revenue.
I don't know if it's tax revenue, is it?
Well, it would be if they're paying tax on, I suppose you wouldn't pay tax on illegal activity, which is why the money needs to be laundered in the first place. But yeah, it's government, it's money that the government would otherwise be getting a piece of. That's why they're so mad about it.
Indeed. Also,
it's a crime, and
I mean, money laundering is generally pretty frowned upon in most places.
It reminds me, I never saw the last season of Ozark. I got to watch that.
Check it out.
It's all about money
Jason
laundering.
Bateman.
Yeah,
is that the guy's name? Yeah, cool. So it's crazy, and they were doing this basically. What the AFP have remarked is that it's kind of funny because they were doing this in plain sight. Is the quote. That it wasn't sort of hidden, in laundromats or anything. It was all very, very, very official and very upfront.
I really think I'd be a good criminal because I just don't think I would get caught in the trappings of like having a bunch of like fancy Birkin bags and Rolex watches. And, it's like that scene in Casino where they've just done the heist and the guy and his wife rolls up and he rolls up in a brand new Cadillac and she's in a brand new fur coat. And he goes, what did I tell you? No big purchases. Like, this is how you get caught, you fucking idiot. Take it back now. This is how we're all going to get fucking stung for this robbery because we're all just suddenly rich. Like, one of them lived in a $10 million house in Baldwin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot.
They can't, and the reason they picked up on this is the most interesting detail of the story to me, is because the reason they picked up on this is because they were like, they're still doing a lot of business even over lockdowns for some reason. There's no, their physical locations physically couldn't be doing any business because we've got, multiple months-long stage 4 lockdowns where people aren't allowed to leave the house, and yet their books don't look like they've taken much of a hit at all. What's going on here? And it's just like, man, if you just like kept a low profile and stopped making, like, just made less money over that period, you probably wouldn't have gotten caught. But you're like, no one's going to check. No one's going to know. It's fine.
Any COVID disaster payments?
Oh, God, would that be hilarious?
Oh, my God. Oh, good.
You know, times are tough. You know, I can only fit 8 Rolexes on this hand.
Your hands are only so big, so
they're heavy. People don't tell you that they're heavy, but they're heavy. There's a lot of gold in those watches.
You know, they last you forever.
It's a timepiece, Adam. It's not a watch. It's a
piece of time. Uh-huh. Okay, sorry, my apologies. I guess other people that would love timepieces are neo-Nazis. Sorry to burst your Melbourne bubble even further, but a bunch of neo-Nazis have, according to the headline of this article, walked free from court, spared further jail time over an attack on some Victorian hikers. So you'll remember, we often make remarks about this, about
neo-Nazis and the Grampians.
Yes, yeah. So this is like the OG sort of, well, maybe not even the OG, but like one of the original sort of proto stories. So a bunch of, there were a bunch of campers.
Before you go on with that, we've got friend of the show, Polyverse, writing in, what is that Hamlet-looking contraption behind Adam? I think he's referring to the Killzone mask that you've got there from the game.
Yes.
Killzone.
Yeah.
Speaking of fascists, Killzone. I just thought that'd be a nice little tie in there.
Yeah. It is actually, it's designed to look kind of Nazi-like. Killzone's a great game. I enjoyed it when I was younger. It was fine. The second one wasn't. Whatever. It's all right. Okay.
That's fine. Anyway, so rather than space Nazis, let's talk about actual Nazis.
Actual Nazis.
Yeah.
So, back in 2019, 2021 in this instance, there were a bunch of hikers in the Grampians, and they were filming some Nazis doing some stuff, and they were basically filming them on their phone. The Nazis spotted them and then basically proceeded to sort of corral them and attack them in their car. The hikers got in their car, locked the doors, the windows were smashed, and the people were left very scared and shaken. Then they the police investigated, and they found, the blood DNA matched, and a knife and a balaclava, all this stuff. They're like, oh, this is obviously yours. You guys did this. And they've charged these 2 men. So the 2 men in question here are Thomas Sewell and Jacob Hersant, and they were convicted and spent some jail time in remand as part of this attack. So they've been convicted. They've definitely done it, but they pled. I don't know if they pled guilty necessarily, but no, they did. They pleaded guilty to the charges. And so they spent some jail time. But interestingly, this is where it gets a little weird. The judge, Kelly Blair, sort of remarked that there's a good prospect of them being rehabilitated, basically.
No, what?
And then said, "Good luck with the future, gentlemen," as they sort of stepped off at the end of the hearing. The 2 gentlemen in question then proceeded to walk outside the court to a bunch of people that were there, I guess welcome them out. They high-fived a bunch of people.
Great.
And then proceeded to tell journalists they were innocent of their charges, despite entering guilty pleas, spouted some homophobic and anti-Semitic slurs, and walked off.
It's kind of like the crime thing, though. Just saying, I feel like if your aim was to be a Nazi, surely there are more effective ways of achieving your, these are then harassing some random hikers and then getting on the news and, I don't know, doing some anti-Semitic slurs and if surely no big purchases, right? Don't do any hate crimes out in the open.
Get a balaclava and a knife and go and punch someone's window in.
Why? And then
you're in a public park.
And then leave fingerprints in blood on the car. What are you doing?
why are you getting angry at the fact, like, you're in a public park
Someone
doing
needs
whatever Nazi things you're doing? What did you expect people to do? Just to smile and nod?
Just chill out. Like, I feel like these guys need a bullet journal. They really need to figure out what their goals are, and then they need to work backwards from there. So if you're wanting to bring on an oncoming, race war, you got to think about, like, what are the things? Like, what can I do? 80-20 principle, okay? Pareto principle. What is the 20% of things that I can do that will give me 80% of the results, okay? That help bring about the oncoming race war that you're looking to incite. And like, harassing hikers, it's not one of them. I don't think anyone's, I find it, just think about your goals, maybe put together a vision board, do some imaging, like, think about what it is you want in life. Because it's not helping you get there.
No. I made a mistake. So this wasn't the incident in the Grampians. This was in the Cathedral Ranges State Park. So it's a separate
Oh, no, I was
I'm
making a
talking
joke. Yeah. Different Nazis. Just Nazis like to be out in the bush. They just really love nature.
Love being in the nature.
Yeah.
But I just find, like, obviously, Nazis bad. These guys need to...
Nazis bad. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
These guys need some, like, de-radicalization sort of lessons. Interestingly, like, they've got to do some community service, and that's it, really. They're time served plus community service, and away you go. They were one of them was initially, I think, denied bail as well, because they were worried he'd go out and do something else, bad. But now everything's fine, apparently.
Yeah, now it's all chill.
But it's just hilarious that the judge is like, oh, you guys, like, they just suck up, plead guilty, and just,
Meanwhile, if it was a Sudanese gang, they locked him up, thrown away the key. Like, forget about it.
But also, like, just the willingness of the judge to be
he's wearing a suit. Like, he's a clean-cut white boy. Like, she'll be right. He's done 3 days in jail. She'll be right.
He's done okay. Well, they did a bit more than that. It was, I think, a few months. But I think...
her son was sentenced to 3 days in jail, the same amount of time he had already spent in custody.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But,
and Sewell was sentenced to 5 weeks in jail. But he did not need to return to custody, having already spent this time in prison when his bail was denied. So, so they both got time served.
And it's like, but how, the fact that they were in the court, willing to say all these things, and then they step out the fucking door of the building.
That part is actually, like... really concerning. It's like, I'm guilty and I'm really sorry, and express remorse. Say whatever you got to say in front of the judge in order to, like, get your time off. Like, and then immediately just like flick and mentally just flick to the other state and get out in front of the cameras and go, that was all bullshit. Like,
F the, whatever. And
I don't even want to, like, I don't even want to repeat it. Like,
it's just, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
But what that shows is a real, understanding of the media environment that we're in. It's like, what happens in court, what happens in a fucking transcript that no one's going to read anyway, does not matter. What matters is what people see on camera. Like, it actually shows, like, a pretty terrifying amount of media literacy and, like, misinformation, like, understanding about misinformation in the current environment. Because it's like, they know that the people for whom their message is important, we'll see them on camera and we'll see that and be, happy and feel justified.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like, I'll say whatever I need to say to the judge in order to get off, and then I'll just flip on a dime.
Surely something like that, like, you can, if something like that happens, there's got to be rules somehow.
Come back here.
yeah, literally. Like,
you're not sorry at all.
Hey.
Yeah, I believe that's what's referred to as the hey now principle. Hey now. Yeah. Hey now, come on.
The 100-second rule. Like, don't just like if you say something within 100 seconds of leaving the court, maybe that should be taken into consideration. I don't know. Just seems fucking dumb.
Friend of the show.
It defeats the whole point.
Friend of the show, Polyverse, is writing in. I love how Nazis are also kind of trying to rebrand by calling themselves white nationalists. Yeah, I've seen the term, like, Christian nationalists thrown around as well. It's like, we're not racist. We're not Nazis. We're just Christian nationalists, and we believe that we should have a Christian country. Is it full of white people? Yes, it happens to be full of only white people, but that's not we're not racists. We just love Christianity and nothing else.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, like, I mean, people are always like, oh, there's Nazis in Ukraine. I'm like, there's Nazis fucking everywhere, man. Bro,
there's Nazis in Brunswick. They're around. I had a really...
It's like, how do you... I don't know how... to get these, I mean, the Victorian government's done a few things. They've banned, the Nazi salute and
the SWAT sticker,
things, but it's hard because unless there's an out and out crime, you can't really prosecute them for concepts.
It's one of the dangers of an open democracy, a pluralistic society, freedom of speech. It's one of the weaknesses of that is that fascism has a
pull to it.
Yes. It has allowed a platform by which to then go and seed its ideology, right? And fascism, obviously fascists get into power, then that exact same kind of freedom of speech they've utilized as a vehicle to win power will then be closed to any other kind of debate. But it is one of those things. It's like the weakness of democracy and open society is that it is vulnerable to exactly these kinds of forces who would seek to use the mechanisms of democracy against itself in order to dismantle it. Yeah. And that's what we saw in Nazi Germany with Hitler. Hitler rose to power democratically.
Yeah,
initially. No. So it is one of those things where it's like, I really don't know how we combat this. Like,
you just got to educate people as much as you can, I guess, and sort of make them realize sort of what.
Well, just as well, we have a really clean information environment for people to get accurate information about all this sort of stuff, because otherwise that'd be really problematic. But
I mean, that was another thing, I guess, with Nazi Germany, the period just after the Depression, in the rise of the Nazis, was that, the information space was a bit muddled there because there was a lot of disenfranchisement. That they managed to muddy the waters with several other different issues that sort of paved the way for them.
Initially, it was the Nationalist Socialist Party. And so there were like elements of sort of like class patriotism struggle and like patriotism and like there were all these other things that got sort of
everyone's agreeing about the Treaty of Versailles and,
sure.
But the same thing is like, there was a lot of people, it's not like now where there's the internet, but like, there'd be pamphlets, newspapers, and there'd be, communist newspapers, there'd be, other types of newspapers, and all this stuff would be floating around. And then they physically, over time, they physically muscled out the competition. And just dominated the information space.
Well, it makes sense if you think like there's one group of people that's not playing by the same rules. Like democracy as an institution requires everyone to play by the same rules. And if there's one group of people who just refuses to play by the rules and is happy to use threats and physical violence in order to be able to get what they want, it puts them at a disproportionate advantage compared to everyone else. Like it is kind of a fragile thing, democracy, in that we all need to agree. That's why the overturning of the election and the attempted rather overturning of the 2020 election in the United States is so problematic because it just shows that the Republicans are a side that is not willing to play by the same rules anymore. Thanks to Trump.
And at least, there are some people that do it. Obviously, like they know, like they're doing it deliberately. But there's also some people who just are willfully ignorant, and that's probably a good way to segue to our next story, which is
speaking of neo-Nazis, and white supremacists.
Well, we're not saying that they're Nazis, but there's
Donald Trump. I think it's safe to say is a white supremacist. I don't think there's any kind of. I think we can safely say that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what we would say is that there's definitely a sort of threat to democracy. Perhaps
he said during the neo-Nazi riot in Charlottesville, he said there were very nice, very good people on both sides. So I think he opened his campaign in 2015 by saying Mexicans were rapists and murderers, and some I assume are good people. So he ran on a platform of banning Muslims to enter the country. Remember when he wanted to nuke a tornado?
Okay, the hurricane.
White supremacist. The hurricane is neither here nor there. I just love that as a fact, as a little piece of trivia. Like, remember what he was talking about, nuking a hurricane.
Anyway, but obviously, the several cases that are currently going against Trump and his campaign and cohort and people that were around him during the 2020 election. Obviously, probably the most prominent of those is the case in Georgia, where there were a bunch of people charged under sort of racketeering and sort of anti-mafia laws, I think was the way they sort of bundled it all together. Yeah. And now it and who would have thought this would happen? They're all starting to flip.
Oh, I love it. I love it when the rats start to roll on each other. I love it.
You go.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to say, so here's Trump attorney Jenna Ellis pleading guilty in the Georgia elections case.
As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that was ex-Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis. And
so she's
tearful court speech.
She's pleaded guilty to one count of aiding and abetting false statements and writings, which is slightly different to the racketeering sort of thing they got them on.
Yes, but I mean, I read that as like, I think someone on Crooked on the Pod Save America crew described it as a heat-seeking missile aimed squarely at Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah,
because it's like who was she working with? She was working with Rudy Giuliani, and she's like, I relied on lawyers, really old, crusty, drunk lawyers who would, to give me the right advice. And I'm not guilty. Okay, I didn't. Try and overturn an election. I was like so busy, filing all these legal challenges that I didn't stop and do a Google to see if there was any true information in them. It's not my fault. I was just a mere lawyer of checks notes, 30 years old. Just a little baby. I had no idea what I was doing.
I mean, and this is the thing is that, I think a lot of these people, it's a question were they just literally just that ignorant? And, they just it's that whole thing of the cognitive dissonance of you just ignore the things that are there obviously in front of you and then just and then warp your own reality to believe the things that you want to believe? Or was it just literally just I just didn't I just didn't know. I wasn't I feel like there's got to be with a lot of these people, they have warped their own reality to believe what they think is true. Does that make sense? The
question is how complicit are they in warping their own reality? Because I think some of them genuinely believed it. I think Sidney Powell, for example, who we're going to talk about next, genuinely is just mentally ill and believes believes the things that she's saying, even though one of the allegations, I think it came out during the Trump Dominion, the Fox Dominion case. They're talking about who Sidney Powell's source was for a lot of this information. And it was just some lunatic, unhinged, schizophrenic person who wrote an email about information sourced from her dreams. And Sidney Powell's see, we've got the evidence. It's okay, well, if you believe that, then you're probably just a mentally ill person and you need help if you think that's a reliable source. But what bothers me more is the people, the opportunists who know that it's bullshit, like Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
And it came out in those messages that Tucker Carlson said, she's a grifter, she's insane, no one wants anything to do with her about Sidney Powell.
But they'll just still publish it.
And still publish it and still get on air because that's what their audience wants to hear.
Yeah.
That's even scarier.
That's scarier almost.
That's even scarier to me because it's one thing if you genuinely believe something that's just provably false. You're just wrong. I can't help you if you just believe wrong things. If you believe the earth is flat, you're just an idiot. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. There's lots of evidence to show that it's round. If you believe Trump won the election, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. But if you're one of those opportunists who sees a political opportunity and go, I can enrich myself, or I can empower myself, or I can get close. If I win this and I pull this off and overthrow democracy, I'm going to be in the inner circle. I'm going to have a bunch of power, and that's going to be really good for my career. That makes me sick because it's like, you know better. You have the not
cognitive
just
ability.
you have the ability. You don't just have the actus reus, right? The guilty act, but you also have the mens rea, the guilty mind, right? When we talk about the, punishing and the idea of punishment in legal terms, it comes back to those like those Latin words, those principles, where it's like, you need to know what you're doing is wrong, and you need to do the wrong thing, right? Like that is what makes a guilty person by definition. So,
guilty,
and I feel like those people are in some ways more culpable than the like the true Heaven's Gate believers that think they're going to get raptured up to heaven if they help Donald Trump. Like those people are just, like they're gone mentally, I guess.
I mean, and maybe that's part of, and this is probably, it's interesting. It links back to the Nazi thing, is that there are some people who just genuinely believe and are attracted to these kind of causes.
It's a cult. It's a cult of personality. Same as with Hitler. They were just a bunch of people who were, some people who were hangers on and just wanted to ride the coattails to power. There's some people who were true believers, and some were opportunists, and and some who
all types, right? Yeah.
Some who saw the way that things were trending and go, I'm not really a Nazi, but I'm going to be on the out group if I don't follow these guys and support them.
And they have wonderful uniforms, so
very good fashion sense.
I really want to look.
Like, say what you want about the SS. I mean, Hugo Boss can design a uniform. They were snappy dresses. Obviously fascist. That's a joke. Please don't take that out of context. No. Obviously, we don't like Nazi. We don't support Nazis here on the show.
We do not. So Ellis has been sentenced to 5 years probation. She's been ordered to pay a $5,000 restitution to the Georgia Secretary of State and 100 hours of community service in addition to her apology letter.
Yeah, preferably not something to do with lawyering. We're thinking like picking up trash, something like that. Like, please don't do more lawyering. The thing that I think is really interesting about that is like that's a pretty light punishment. And experts are saying that suggests that she's flipped on.
It's a plea deal. It's the article that says here. This Guardian article says.
Yeah, but just because you pled guilty, and she's pled guilty to things that are misdemeanors, right? They're not felony charges because she's a lawyer, and that would mean if she pled guilty to felony charges, she'd no longer be able to practice law.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what I imagine has happened is there's been Fonnie Willis has gone you plead guilty to a couple of misdemeanors, you don't do any time. You keep your law license. You still get to be a lawyer and practice. You don't lose your life. You don't lose your livelihood. But you're going to give me fucking everything you got on Rudy Giuliani.
And that's the thing is that she did appear at a December 2020 hearing in the Georgia Senate with Rudy Giuliani and Ray Smith, in which they made numerous false allegations about voter fraud in Georgia. So, I think you're right. The heat-seeking missile to Rudy Giuliani seems to be a big part of this, and I guess through Rudy Giuliani, you eventually get to Trump as well.
Well, that's the idea: is you just keep rolling. It's literally like a fucking Scorsese film. You roll up the guys at the bottom, you get them to flip on the guys above them, and you get them to flip on the guys above them, and you roll up the whole organization, right? Like it's literally a mob prosecution.
Yeah, it's great. It's
you love to see
literally dramatic, So and then the next big fish, I guess, to roll over, shall we say, is, and as we discussed before, Sidney Powell. So she's also a former Trump lawyer. She's charged alongside Donald Trump as part of the Georgia case, and she has also pleaded guilty as part of a cooperation agreement with prosecutors just days before her trial was scheduled to start.
Now,
and this is hilarious because she was real firm on this up until quite recently that nothing sus had happened.
I do think that Sidney Powell is one of the true believers, right? Like one of those people who would literally, wants to die and go to heaven for Saint Trump. Like I really do think she believes that. And in case you're forgetting who Sidney Powell was, she was interviewed by on Four Corners by oh my God,
the reporter.
This journalist is Sarah Ferguson from Four Corners, and which resulted in this delightful bit of audio. So just a reminder, this is audio from 2 years ago talking about the Dominion voting systems and Smartmatic and the allegations that she had made about what had happened during the 2020 election. So we'll hear that, and then we'll come back to the present day.
Let's get a few simple facts straight. In how many states were Smartmatic machines and software used in the 2020 election?
I don't even know the exact numbers.
After all your involvement?
Well, the focus was on the 6 key swing states, the places where voting had stopped being counted the night of the election.
But you were making some big statements, very dramatic, critical statements about Smartmatic. You must have known what their involvement was in the election.
Well, I know that Smartmatic and Dominion were essentially inextricably intertwined and had done business together for a long time.
Let's leave the history. Just in terms of the 2020 election, what was Smartmatic's involvement?
Oh, you'd have to go look at our complaint with respect to the 4 states that we filed legal complaints in to get the details of that.
A Google search would tell you, let alone anything that Smartmatic themselves have said subsequently, that they were involved in one single county in LA. Are you saying you're not aware of that?
Well, I'm saying I think their involvement's probably a lot bigger than that.
But their machines were used in one county. You're aware of that?
Well, their machines might have been used one place, but their software could very well have been used other places.
You claimed on Fox that Smartmatic shifted votes from Trump to Biden in multiple battleground states. That was your argument, wasn't it?
That there was an algorithm run in the machines via the software that shaved votes from Trump and gave those to Biden.
What actual research or fact-checking did you do at the time to find out what Smartmatic's actual involvement in the election was?
Do you work for Smartmatic?
You've made an allegation against Smartmatic that they stole a presidential election. I think it's incumbent on both of us to know what Smartmatic's involvement was. It seems like a pretty foundational fact.
I mean, I'm confused right now about why you're here.
Because you made a series of very strong allegations against Smartmatic and against Dominion, containing many errors of fact. Do you accept the fact now that the company that you accused of stealing a national election only operated in one county in LA in California? One county, one state.
No, I'm not prepared to accept that fact. I think Smartmatic's involvement was far more significant than that. Do I think they're trying to minimize their involvement? Of course I do.
You said that Smartmatic owns Dominion. How do you justify such a basic factual error?
I'm going to stop this interview. It's wholly inappropriate in the litigation that we're in.
But we're not even in the area of great dispute. These are the simple facts of who owns what.
No, we're done.
She gets up and walks out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Who agreed? Did she agree to that interview?
What did you think they were going to talk about, Sydney? Why did you agree to this?
Right.
She goes, do you work for Smartmatic? It's like, Sarah Ferguson's like, no, what? I've got, what? I've got decades of a career as an ABC journalist. Like, what are you talking about?
Sarah Ferguson's a stone cold killer. And yeah, I think she did very well. So I keep a straight face. I would have been like, what? Anyway, so the same Sidney Powell, who you just heard from that interview, has now pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanor counts of conspiracy to commit interference with election duties. She was sentenced to 6 years probation, a $6,000 fine, $2,700 in restitution to the state, and is required to turn over documents and testify truthfully in her co-defendants' trials, which is, again, like, given her involvement,
she gonna testify. She gonna testify. She gonna testify.
That is a slap on the wrist for her. But yes, the key thing is the last sentence, which is she'll have to truthfully testify, which is interesting because she obviously in that interview, this is 2 years ago, and even recently she was, I think even when she was arrested, she was like, I don't think she was particularly.
I like
sorrowful.
I said, I think Sidney Powell is a true believer. And so for her to flip as well means she was just placed in such an impossible position that there was nothing there. Like if she wants to retain her life and career, she has to testify. She has to roll over, right?
If she is a true believer, how do you get her to testify truthfully though? Because
you establish a fact pattern, and then if she testifies to anything that doesn't match the fact pattern that you've established, you can do her for perjury. right? You can, and then unwind this deal and go, okay, well, you said, this doesn't match up with XYZ, which you said before, and which we know to be true. Therefore, you haven't testified truthfully, and you're going to jail for fucking forever. So that's how these...
They would have already worked through a detail of what they needed, I guess, before. Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But yeah, it is crazy that you're like, oh, we'll get this person who's obviously delusional to testify.
Well, but that's like, and it sort of makes you like, for her, for someone who I consider to be like a true believer of all this sort of stuff, to flip, like that means a lot more than Jenna Ellis, who was just like, having a sook about her illegal career. Like, oh, I was honestly didn't try to deny the election. I was just a little girly who didn't know good right from wrong. Like, like that means a lot more, because Sidney Powell has absolutely got the fucking has got the goss.
Obviously, Rudy Giuliani was like Trump's, I guess, big lawyer.
Main man.
Trump named Sidney Powell, as a special counsel to investigate supposed election fraud.
So this is the best part. Is Trump goes, I don't really know Sidney. She was not like a part of my legal counsel. As like, there's like social media posts that you've made previously saying like welcoming Sidney Powell to your legal team and things like that. Like, it's so just like obviously provably false. I know it's like, so like that kind of like derangement that Trump gives everyone around him, where I kind of like this like reality distortion feel that works. But it's like, this is written down. You wrote it down and posted it on the internet that she's joining your legal team. There's bills that you've paid to her. These are not disputable facts. Like, she was on your legal team. She represented you. She's got the dirt. Like, I know we've been saying since 2015, the walls are closing in. Like, it's become a fucking international meme of like, oh no, the walls are closing in and nothing ever happens. But I really think the walls might actually be closing in. Like, I don't see how you get out of this as Trump.
So, the other thing being is that he appointed a special counsel after she pitched a plan to suspend normal voting laws and use military force to seize voting machines.
Because I like the sound of that.
She's been gunning for the whole voting machine thing from day one. Hey, look, voting machines.
And one of the crimes that she was allegedly participating in, that she's pleaded guilty to now, was actually getting a organization in to come into Coffee County and basically like download the information out of voting machines. They're like, we're here from like election integrity. We're here to like audit your machines. And the guys were like, that doesn't seem like that's a legal thing. And they're like, shut up, give us your machines. Like essentially participating in the exact kind of election fraud that they were allegedly
up against,
that they were trying to combat. So the data experts from Sullivan Strickler, a firm that specializes in imaging or making exact copies of electronic devices, footage shows them arriving at the Coffee County election office. What happened inside the elections office is only partially captured on surveillance video, but records show the Sullivan Strickler team imaged almost every component of the election systems in that county, including ballot scanners, the server used to count votes, thumb drives, and flash memory cards. They copied it all. And this is like a massive violation of the election integrity of that county. Like machines, all of those things need to be replaced now at taxpayer expense because, they've
taken the software and the things to make it work.
No. It's like you can't validate that it's like a working system anymore. Like someone could have installed some malware on it, or you know what I mean. Like it's not a clean system anymore. Yeah, you just need to throw it out essentially.
It's hilarious.
It's so wild to me that the ones that are like doing the loudest finger pointing and launching cases and like they're doing this shit. Like no, we're here to audit. Like that's legitimate. Like brown shirts, Nazi fucking behavior. Like, I don't think people really realize how close America came to actually having a successful coup. Like, it was pretty close.
Yep. Yeah, it was not good. Official unnatural selection position.
Not good.
It was not good.
Not good. Anti-coup.
Anyway, all of the Republicans have since realized the errors in their ways and going about the normal methods of governance in a timely and efficient manner since then.
Lol jokes.
Lol jokes, not really. No, but they have elected a new speaker, new House Speaker. Finally, we'll see how long he lasts for. is Trumpist Mike Johnson. Trumpist being he likes Trump. His name is Mike Johnson. His name isn't Trumpist Mike Johnson. His name is Mike Johnson.
May as well be.
And he likes Trump.
They're calling him MAGA Mike now.
MAGA Mike.
MAGA Mike, yeah. I don't know if they saw the film Magic Mike and it was just like on their minds, but that's Trump has dubbed him MAGA Mike, and that's how it's going now. So for those of you who don't know what a Mike Johnson is, and we've got this very helpful explainer from the Pod Save America guys to help us find out what a Mike Johnson is and what his positions are. And maybe he's a bit more progressive than a Jim Jordan or a Steve Scalise. Let's find out what his views are.
That's a Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson is an extremely religiously conservative congressman from Louisiana. He has been called the key architect of Trump's attempted coup in 2020. He would like to ban all abortions nationwide. He is not only against gay marriage, but against gay sex. He wants to take Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay law, make it a nationwide law, have it include not just public schools, but public libraries, hospitals that receive federal funding, the military. He has called being gay inherently unnatural and a dangerous lifestyle that may destroy the entire democratic system. And he has written about the evils of sexual conduct outside of marriage. And here's my favorite. He once tried to lobby for tax breaks for a Noah's Ark theme park in northern Kentucky that would teach people that, guess what? There were actually 2 dinosaurs on the Ark as well. That's how he's squaring the evolution creationism circle. He wants tax breaks so he can let kids know that there's dinosaurs that were on the Ark. That's Mike Johnson. That's who every single House Republican voted for. Pack him up. We want Mike Johnson.
Unreal.
Tax breaks. Just spraying that, but very informative video.
Tax breaks for the Jurassic Park.
You don't know, George. You don't know the good work they're doing in their local community. You have no idea about the things that they have done.
Poly versus rating extremely religious is always a red flag. Yeah, no one describes me as extremely secular. You know what I mean? They're just like, man, George is like militantly secular.
I mean, you are militantly sexual, but let's put that aside.
that aside. Yeah, no one describes someone as like militantly secular or atheistic. I nearly did it again. Like, to be described as extremely religious in a Republican Congress,
yeah, it's lot.
That's a bad sign. So
it's early days. It's interesting that they all voted for him
unanimously. Yeah, they got in behind closed doors. They ran through about half a dozen different candidates, and eventually, I guess the moderates got bored. They're like, "Who's Mike Johnson? Haven't heard of him. I guess he must be fine," and voted unanimously for him. So.
I mean, I guess
he's still got the same set of rules. Like the one person can still, call the speakership into question, and like all those same, like we're going to run into the same kind of like funding the government stoush in a couple of weeks. Like that's going to happen again.
I don't see that not happening. There'll be, and then there'll be a couple of days of angst, and maybe they'll figure it out after a while. But I don't know. It's, I mean, it's good they've got someone, because I was thinking they wouldn't find anyone. But the circus continues, I guess. Watch this space for the next couple of weeks.
The fact that like this is the best of the Republic, like it's okay that he has extremely unpopular conservative social policies, because he's also got extremely unpopular economic policies as well. It's like it's good that he believes that abortion should be banned and gays shouldn't be allowed and dinosaurs are on the ark, because he also believes in regressive tax policy. So it's just good that this guy's third in line to the presidency now. So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mike Johnson. That's what happens now. If there's a big explosion at the Capitol, designated survivor style, old mate is going to be the fucking president of the United States. Terrifying.
Yeah, it is a bit. But that's America. And it's going to get even more fun over the next... when's the next election?
Just over a year away.
Another year away. So, expect more American content, because it's just we can't help ourselves here. We just love a good American right wing batshit crazy story.
I need to scream and
our,
yell about something like.
It's actually part of George's court ordered, mental health.
It's my anger therapy.
Yeah.
I just scream and yell for an hour on the podcast, and then that way I don't harass hikers in the national park.
Yep.
On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flippin' TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at George Tsipos.
And you can follow me down to a local currency exchange business where I'll be learning some new tricks of the trade to buy myself a new Rolex watch.
I'm just curious. I'm just really passionate about...
Sorry. Timepiece.
Yeah, I'm just really passionate about currency exchange and...
love currency.
Very curious about currency and not about money laundering and making myself incredibly wealthy.
No. Yeah.
Allegedly. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
I do need a new watch, though, to be fair. It's bare wrists.
Timepiece.